So why you can't squat in the downswing like you're seeing the top pros here do is because you are missing the one key component to squatting, and that is moving into hip flexion as you move down, starting that downswing. This is so important. If you don't do this and you still manage to squat down and lower down, you're going to hit the ball terrible just like that. This is the key you need to have in your golf swing to give you that squatting visual, and that is hip flexion. So I'm going to tell you a great drill at the end of this video to get you into hip flexion every time to squat properly for great power, great rotation, great control of your golf ball. But I'm also going to tell you what not to do that so many golfers do when they try to squat. So like we said, hip flexion is what we need to do to be able to squat in that downswing. So what is hip flexion? It is ultimately the hips going backwards, which squats you down, as you can see me demonstrating here, but it also flexes my upper body down. So that gives you that visual of lowering. Now, this is the correct way to squat in the golf swing, because how we get hip flexion then helps us, if we continue to have that feel throughout the downswing, get the squat out of the ground and benefit nicely from it. So, as we said, we want to have the hips flex backwards. So that is the first move, is getting this left hip to go back. We see and hear so many players talk about this. Tommy Fleetwood being one of them, Scotty Scheffler being another. Justin Rose talks about getting the left hip to go back. When that left hip goes back, that flexes the hips and that pushes them back. That will give you that lowering move. But that's going to give you the squatting visual. It's going to get you loading into the ground, absolutely. So left hip back to start off with, lowers you into the ground to get that loading of the vertical force. But lowering down into the ground is only good if you can come back out and spike it back again. So that's where, if you keep that left side of the hip continually going back, which gets you squatting, so back lowers you, and then continually push that left hip back and back and back and back and back, what else happens? Look at my left leg. See how my left leg starts to straighten up as I'm going through the impact area. If I keep on pushing that left hip back, what's that doing? That's then spiking that force I've just put into the ground, that I've just lowered down into ground for, back out again. So that's where we can then simplify it. Squatting is just a byproduct of absolutely hip flexion, or we could even say hip depth, getting the left hip moving deeper and more back. And if we could just continue to push it more and more back, then we're going to spike it out the ground again and have really good control, power, everything we want out of squatting. But again, squatting is something we see just happen. Not many golfers out there are just trying to physically lower themselves down to the ground. They are just moving their hips in a good way. So let's talk about how golfers do this routinely wrong, then we'll get into a drill to do for it. So this is the why you can't squat in the downswing portion of this video. It's exactly like its title. We know now what to do from the beginning, hip flexion. But a lot of golfers are trying to do, they're just trying to squat. Sounds right though, doesn't it? Of course we want to squat, so what do? It gives us the idea that we just squat dead straight down, flex the knees more, get ourselves lower to the ground in general. That will do nothing for you. That actually, it will do something for you. It will result in shots like this. So I'm just going to lower down in transition, so squat down. It's going to make me fat the golf ball, just like you could hear there. So if we just try to lower down and make that the movement, that means if we just stay there, that's not going to give us more power. That's just made the swing go way down into the ground. And then from there, our swing is just going to bottom out early. You're going to hit the ground first. So not great at all. That's where we'll see some players really try their squat, and then they'll have to jump up if they just vertically squat dead straight down without doing it with hip flexion. So if you lower down, you have to stand back up again if you're going to make good contact. Just like so, and it's not going to be very powerful at all. It's going to be weak. You're going to lose control of club face. It's not going to be good. So that's where you hear people saying, absolutely, that they want to squat, and they're doing so they can have a base to rotate from. Again, if you just lower and flex down with the knees, you're not going to then rotate if you do it via that method, because your body's going to prioritize the standing back up to get it out the ground. It's not going to then rotate because you are just going to fat it. That's why so many people, again, who try to squat, they just end up fatting the golf ball because they believe that squatting and physically trying to do it gets you to rotate. It doesn't. Squatting properly gets you to rotate, but that's not because we're trying to squat. We're just getting that left hip moving back, that hip flexion, which lowers us down towards the ground That gets us that kind of squatting look, but it's rotating us at the same time. Left hip flexion. Don't just try to lower your hips dead straight down and lower yourself via bending those knees. Get that left hip moving back. That's going to get it in there, and just continue to move that left hip back to get that squat out of the ground again. So that's why when you're seeing a top tour player squat, look at what their hips are doing. Are their hips moving more back? They are. They're moving into hip flexion. So let's talk about how to train that. So there's two drills I really like that move you into hip flexion and get you squatting down. They're both favorites of the channel. So the one that doesn't need any introductions, and that is, yes, the classic chair drill. So there's been a little break of the chair drill from the channel because I talk about it a lot because it's a great drill. So here it comes. I cannot talk about squatting in the downswing without getting you to do this. Every student who we need to move deeper with the hips, get them into hip flexion, this is by far the best drill to do for it. So of course, it's very self-explanatory here. If I want to flex my hips in that downswing, I've got to push the chair back with my left hip and continually push it, push it, and push it, and push it. If I'm not trying to push it, the drill is useless. We don't just want to try and keep contact. That won't do anything for us. We just want to keep that chair pushing back. Of course, it's brilliant for early extenders. Give it a little push back in the backswing as well to load up that hip flexion, and then absolutely keep it pushing. Brilliant. Okay, we want to keep that movement going. We need to keep it flowing. So this is where, if we do a ton of this, keep pushing this back. If we want to get it properly, got to push it back as much as we can. Then what's that going to do? That's going to give us the feel. Drills create the feels. So once we've done a ton of that drill, we can take it away, and then we can absolutely go and replicate that same feel. I like the feeling like someone's grabbing your trouser pockets and putting them back. Backswing and then downswing. That gets you into more hip flexion. That gets you in the nice movements we want. Absolutely, that's going to lower you down. That's going to squat you. That's going to be making you use your vertical force way better. So the second drill, and that targets your left hip more, because we know we want that left side being pushed back, gets us into hip flexion, but the technical term of what that left hip is doing is called moving more into its left hip depth, so getting deeper. So this drill, we just grab a club, we put the club behind our right leg, and then we angle the club to where it's behind, the shaft is behind my left calf. So then what I want to do, I want to then move down that downswing and hit the shaft with my left leg as soon as I can. What's that doing? That's getting me moving deeper in that left hip, which is then going to be flexing the hips and moving me more down and squatting me down, using that vertical force, loading it into the ground. And if I continue to push that, what's that doing? That is then going to straighten up that left leg and then spike the force out the ground. So that's where both these drills, like with the chair, if I continually push it back, that left leg's going to move into some extension going through impact. Same thing with this. So that's where these don't just give you the visual of the squatting part. The visual of lowering down does nothing. We want to have the totality of the movement, the sequencing of it, so we can get the force out the ground. Again, that lowering down is only just to load the vertical force. So let's hit one here, making sure I'm hitting this as quickly as I can with my left leg in that downswing. So I'd say as soon as we can, don't rush it, just nice and soon. And there we go. That's going to lower down your hips. They both work absolutely great, these do. So that is where, if you're still struggling to stay in your posture once you've done these, then there will be something called lower down. So squat, stay in your posture and come back up. There will be something else in your golf swing that is causing you to do this. Knowing the movement pattern is incredibly important, but there may be things in your golf swing as well. So that's where we call these root causes of a problem in the swing. That's why I could see people with, let's say, very shut face. A lot of you strong grippers out there aren't aware that if you get the club face too shut, your body won't just instinctively rotate. It will want to stand up to raise the hands to open the face because it's an easier method than rotating. So that's where that can be one. Lack of depth at the top of the swing could be a reason why you're not squatting down. Anything that will cause you to where when you do lower down in that hip flexion, to not hit a good shot. So that's where, if you are struggling, absolutely there will be reasons why in your golf swing. Great way and great place to look at it. One, lessons with myself on Skillist. So one-to-one lessons, we will find out the reason why, absolutely. Or you could dive straight into my ultimate guide to rotation in the downswing. Because if we are stunted with our rotation, we won't be able to move into hip flexion. So that's where the answer to that will lie in that also. And there's a link to the description in that full guide. It's 2 hours long, all different videos on there explaining everything you need to know on the topic. So if you enjoyed the video, click that like button if you want more golf instruction just like this. Hit the subscribe button, hit the bell button too to be notified every time I put out a video.